fellow travelers, friends dreaming of retiring in Thailand. Imagine this. You're standing at an ATM in Bangkok, the afternoon sun heavy on your back. You press your card into the machine, enter your code, and request a withdrawal. You're planning to take out a large sum, 2.5 million baht, your retirement savings, the money you've worked your entire life for. But the screen flashes an error. You frown, try again. Another error. Your stomach sinks. The balance shows 0. Gone. Every single baht, drained. Her name was Chada. A 20-something Thai woman with a soft smile, eyes that sparkled when she laughed, and a voice that once made you feel less alone. For Lucas, a businessman from the UK in his 50s, hoping to finally settle down and retire in peace, Chada was everything. She was youth. She was beauty. She was a second chance at happiness. 4 months, Lucas showered her with affection. He gave her everything: gifts, clothes, freedom. He even handed over his ATM card and password, telling himself it was love, telling himself it was trust. And she played her part perfectly. Sweet words, gentle touches, promises of forever. Until the day he found out the truth. Until the day he discovered that the paradise he thought he'd retired into had turned into hell. Friends, this is not a typical love story. This is a brutal warning. A cautionary tale for every man who dreams of finding love under Thailand's golden sun. Because while the beaches glitter, while the temples stand tall and serene, Thailand's beauty hides dangerous traps. Traps that prey on your loneliness, your desire for love, and your longing for a second chance. Lucas's story is one of those traps. Stay with me. Don't skip this, because what I'm about to share could save your future, or the future of someone you love. But before we go deeper into Lucas's journey, friends, let me remind you, subscribe to this channel, hit the bell icon, and join our community. Trust me, stories like this are not just entertainment, they are survival guides. Now, let's go back to the beginning. To who Lucas was before Thailand. To the man who thought he had it all figured out, before he met Chada. Before we talk about Chada, the woman who would unravel his life, we need to understand Lucas. Lucas was 52 years old when he first set foot in Thailand. He wasn't poor. In fact, by most standards, he was doing quite well. He ran a mid-sized business in the UK, a logistics company he had built from the ground up. Years of hard work, endless nights, and missed weekends with friends had paid off. The company gave him stability. It gave him money. What it didn't give him was happiness. You see, Lucas had been divorced for nearly a decade. His marriage collapsed after years of distance, resentment, and the quiet kind of loneliness that eats away at a man. He had no children, no partner, and the friends he once shared pints with were now busy with families of their own. His life was a routine of boardrooms, spreadsheets, and empty apartments. And with every birthday candle he blew out, the weight of regret grew heavier. By his late 40s, Lucas began telling himself a story: when I hit my 50s, I'll slow down. I'll sell the business, retire early, and find a new beginning somewhere warm. Somewhere beautiful. Somewhere I won't feel this emptiness. That's where Thailand entered the picture. For years he had seen glossy photos online, emerald waters around Phuket, golden temples in Bangkok, the tranquil hills of Chiang Mai. He read stories of other foreigners, digital nomads working from cafes, retirees living like kings on a modest budget, men his age finding young love in paradise. The idea obsessed him. A fresh start. A reinvention. A chance to step out of the grey drizzle of England and into the sunlight of Southeast Asia. Inside, Lucas was battling demons he barely admitted to himself. The fear of aging alone, the fear of irrelevance, the fear that his best days were already behind him. Thailand, to him, represented more than a country. It represented redemption. And so, he began to plan. He sold his business, liquidated his assets, and transferred his savings into a retirement account. Money meant to last him through the decades ahead. He told his family and old colleagues that he was finally going to live a little. Some supported him. Others whispered doubts. "Are you sure?" they asked. "Thailand is beautiful, yes, but it's not always what it seems." Lucas brushed it off. He was tired of warnings. Tired of living in fear. He wanted sun, freedom, and maybe, just maybe, love. He booked his flight. One-way ticket. London to Bangkok. And as he boarded the plane, sitting by the window with a quiet smile, Lucas whispered to himself, "This is it. My new beginning." But what Lucas didn't know was that his search for paradise would lead him straight into the arms of a storm. Because the man who thought he was escaping loneliness was actually running toward it, wrapped in silk and perfume. The stage was set. The money was ready. And in Thailand, fate, or something darker, was waiting. When Lucas first arrived in Thailand, it felt like stepping into a dream. The moment he walked out of Suvarnabhumi airport, the air hit him like a wave, thick, humid, alive. He could smell roasted chicken sizzling on street carts, hear the shrill calls of tuk-tuk drivers competing for fares, and see the neon signs glowing in both English and Thai. After decades in the grey drizzle of London, this felt like color had been turned back on in his life. Bangkok was chaotic, but exhilarating. Skyscrapers towered above tangled power lines. Street vendors sold bowls of steaming noodles for less than the price of a coffee back home. Lucas sat at an open-air bar his first night, sipping a cold Chong beer, watching the city pulse around him. For the first time in years, he felt something dangerous. Hope. He spent his first weeks exploring like a tourist. Temples that glittered in the sunlight. Riverboats gliding past wooden houses on stilts. Crowds of monks in saffron robes collecting morning alms. He ate pad thai on the sidewalk, sticky mango rice at midnight, bowls of fiery tom yum soup that made his eyes water but left him grinning. Everywhere he looked, life seemed vibrant, effortless, and free. Lucas also discovered the expat community. He met retirees from Australia, digital nomads from Germany, backpackers who decided never to leave. They told him the same story: you can live like a king here. Cheap rent. Amazing food. And the women, they actually want to be with you. He laughed at first, uncomfortable. But late at night, when he walked back to his rented condo, those words echoed in his mind. Maybe, just maybe, this country held not only adventure, but companionship. Still, Lucas told himself he wasn't here for women. He was here for peace. He wanted to slow down, to enjoy life's simple pleasures, to let go of the loneliness that had haunted him for years. But paradise has two faces. Because as dazzling as Thailand is, the beaches of Phuket where waves crash against limestone cliffs, the golden sunsets of Chiang Mai where lanterns drift into the night sky, there is another side. A side tourists rarely see until it's too late. It hides in the shadows of neon-lit streets, behind the sweet laughter of girls too young to know the weight of the promises they make, and in the eyes of those who see lonely foreigners not as partners, but as opportunities. Lucas didn't know it yet. He was too busy falling in love with the country. But the country had its traps. And one of those traps was already waiting for him, a young woman named Chada. It wasn't in a bar. It wasn't in the neon haze of Pattaya or the loud chaos of Nana Plaza. No, Lucas's first meeting with Chada happened in the kind of place that felt respectable. A small cafe in Chiang Mai, tucked into a quiet street lined with lanterns and flowering trees. Lucas had flown north after a month in Bangkok, chasing the promise of a slower life. Chiang Mai was peaceful, cultural, temples on every corner, markets spilling with hand-woven goods, a city where expats often said, "This is the real Thailand." That morning, Lucas had been sipping his coffee, scrolling through his tablet, when she appeared. Chada. She was in her 20s, early, maybe mid-20s, with long black hair cascading over her shoulder, a fitted blouse, and jeans that looked simple but elegant. Not the stereotype of a bar girl. Not someone trying to lure foreigners with flashy moves. She looked like a university student, or maybe a young professional. She asked if she could sit near him. The cafe was crowded. Lucas nodded, smiling politely. What began as small talk turned into a long conversation. She spoke enough English to carry herself with charm, sprinkling in giggles when she stumbled over words. She told him she was studying business, that she wanted to open her own boutique one day. Lucas felt something he hadn't felt in years: curiosity, interest, attraction. And Chada, she was attentive in a way that disarmed him. She leaned in when he spoke. She asked questions about his life in England. She laughed at his jokes, even the ones that weren't particularly funny. By the time he left that cafe, Lucas had her number saved in his phone. And by that evening, they were already exchanging messages. From there, everything moved quickly. Too quickly. dinners at riverside restaurants, walks through night markets, where she held his hand and pointed out her favorite snacks, weekend trips to temples, where she posed for photos beside him, smiling shyly as if she couldn't believe her luck. She told him she had never felt this way before, that he was kind, different from the younger men who only wanted to use her. She even joked, "Maybe you are my destiny." And Lucas, he believed her. He had been starved for connection for so long that every word she spoke fed a hunger inside him. She was young, beautiful, attentive. She made him feel alive, made him feel needed. She made him feel like the man he always wanted to be, strong, desirable, important. The red flags were there, but Lucas brushed them aside. The way she seemed too eager, too available. The way she called him darling after only a week. The way she hinted at how safe she felt with him, how lucky she was, how she wanted to build a future together. But Lucas didn't want to analyze. He wanted to believe. The honeymoon phase was intoxicating. Nights of passion, mornings of sweet texts, afternoons of laughter in cafes and markets. Lucas found himself opening his heart more and more. He introduced her to some expat friends, who raised their eyebrows quietly, but said nothing. He convinced himself she was different from those girls. And the truth is, Chada played her role perfectly. Because beneath the soft smiles and tender words was a mind calculating every move. She wasn't stumbling into love. She was setting the trap. And soon, Lucas would give her the very key to his life. The key to his money. The key to his downfall. For Lucas, life in Thailand had begun to feel like a second youth. Days blurred into nights with Chada at his side, and the loneliness that once weighed on him felt like a distant memory. She had slipped into his life so seamlessly that he could no longer imagine it without her. And that was exactly how she wanted it. Chada knew how to build trust, not through grand gestures, but through small, careful steps. She began introducing him to people she called her family. A cousin who worked at a local shop. An aunt who sold fruit at the market. A neighbor who waved at them with a knowing smile. Lucas felt reassured. This wasn't some girl living in the shadows of Thailand's nightlife. This was a young woman with roots, with community, with real family ties. What Lucas didn't realize was that many of these introductions were staged. Friends playing roles. Neighbors who didn't actually know her beyond a casual nod. But in Lucas's eyes, these scenes painted a picture of a wholesome, trustworthy woman. She also shared secrets. Or what he thought were secrets. Late at night, lying with her head on his chest, she whispered about her struggles growing up poor, about her father who had abandoned the family, about her dreams of building a business so her mother wouldn't have to work in a market anymore. Sometimes she even let tears fall, and Lucas held her tightly, vowing to protect her. In those moments, Lucas felt special. He wasn't just another foreigner passing through. He was the man she trusted with her heart. Chada was also careful to mirror his emotions. If Lucas spoke about the pain of his divorce, she nodded, eyes shining with sympathy, and confessed that she too had once been betrayed. If Lucas dreamed aloud about buying a small home in Chiang Mai, she whispered that she had always wanted a quiet life away from the chaos of Bangkok. Every word he spoke, she echoed with perfect alignment, weaving herself deeper into the fabric of his desires. And with every shared secret, every staged introduction, every mirrored dream, Lucas lowered his guard a little more. He began giving her small responsibilities. At first, just little things. Here, keep this spare key to the condo. Or, can you hold on to this for me? But soon, he went further. He let her shop for groceries, manage small bills, handle daily expenses. She was so grateful, so efficient, always smiling when she returned the change. It felt natural then, when he told her one evening, half joking, "I should just give you my ATM card. You're better at this than me." She laughed, covering her mouth in that shy way he adored. But the very next day, he did it. Handed her the card. Whispered the numbers. A gesture of love, of trust, of blind faith. For Lucas, it was proof of their bond. Proof that he was finally free from the suspicion and bitterness of his past life. For Chada, it was confirmation. The door to his fortune had swung wide open. And still, she played the part of the loving girlfriend flawlessly. Sweet texts. Warm hugs. Nights of whispered promises. Lucas thought he was being trusted, chosen, loved. In reality, he was being measured, tested, and prepared. The trap was tightening. And soon, the first request would come. It started, as these stories so often do, with something small. Something that didn't look like a scam. One evening, Lucas and Chada were having dinner at a small Thai restaurant near the Ping River in Chiang Mai. The air was warm, the lights strung above them cast a golden glow, and Lucas felt at peace. Halfway through the meal, he noticed Chada's smile falter. She poked at her food, her usual bright energy dimmed. "What's wrong, darling?" he asked. She hesitated, then sighed softly. "It's nothing. I don't want to burden you." Lucas leaned in, concerned. "Tell me." She explained that her mother had suddenly fallen ill. A stomach problem, she said, and the hospital bills were more than her family could handle. She had tried everything. Her relatives had chipped in, she had borrowed some money from friends, but it still wasn't enough. Lucas's heart clenched. Here was the young woman who had given him joy again, who had made him feel wanted, now sitting before him with tears in her eyes. Of course he would help. What kind of man wouldn't? "How much do you need?" he asked. She shook her head quickly. No, you've done so much already. I could never." "How much?" Lucas pressed, his voice firm but gentle. Finally, she whispered an amount. It wasn't large. Maybe the equivalent of a few £100. Barely a dent in his retirement funds. He handed it over the very next day. Chada was overwhelmed with gratitude, or at least, she acted like she was. She hugged him tightly, kissed his cheek again and again, whispered that she didn't know what she had done to deserve such a kind man. She promised she would pay him back, though both of them knew she never would. Lucas didn't care. In fact, the act of helping her made him feel more bonded to her, more essential in her life. This wasn't about money, it was about love. About showing her she could rely on him. And that was the trap. Because once the door of financial support is opened, it never closes. The requests stayed small at first. A bill here. School fees for a cousin there. A broken motorbike that needed repairs. Each time, Chada protested weakly, acting ashamed to ask, until Lucas insisted. And each time, she rewarded him with more affection, more sweetness, more of the intimacy he craved. To Lucas, it felt like he was proving himself. To Chada, it was proof that her hook was sinking deeper. And so, little by little, Lucas became more than just a boyfriend. He became her safety net, her provider, her personal bank. What he didn't realize was that these weren't random needs. They were tests. Each request designed to see how far she could push, how much he would give, and how easily she could control him with nothing more than a tear and a smile. The money wasn't the end game. It was the beginning. Because soon, Chada would offer him something far bigger. An opportunity. A dream of building a future together. And that's when the real money would start to flow. The first requests had been small. Manageable. Almost forgettable. But once Lucas had proven he was willing to open his wallet without hesitation, Chada raised the stakes. It happened one afternoon while they were sitting at a cafe in Chiang Mai, sipping iced coffees as the sun filtered through paper lanterns overhead. Chada leaned across the table, her voice low, her eyes filled with that tender vulnerability Lucas had come to adore. "Darling," she began softly, "I want to tell you something. A dream I've had for many years." Lucas smiled, curious. "Tell me." She hesitated, then spoke. "I want to open a small boutique. Fashion, handmade clothes. My friends say I have an eye for style. If I can start something now, I can take care of my mother and, of us. Our future." The words "our future" rang in Lucas's chest like a bell. She wasn't just thinking of herself, she was thinking of them together. Their life. Their stability. Their forever. Lucas's mind began racing. A boutique. A business. He had spent his life building companies. The idea of using his experience and his money to help her build something of her own thrilled him. It wasn't just charity, it was investment. Partnership. Proof of love. He leaned in. "Tell me what you need." And so she did. Rent for a shop space. Capital for materials. Money to pay seamstresses. Legal fees. All of it sounded legitimate, and none of it seemed unreasonable for a man with a healthy retirement fund. What Lucas didn't realize was that he was stepping into a carefully orchestrated game. Because in Thailand, foreigners cannot directly own property or certain types of businesses without complicated legal structures. Chada knew this. She told him not to worry. "We can put it in my name," she said sweetly, "until you get the right papers. You trust me, right?" Of course he trusted her. And so, the first larger transfer was made. Tens of thousands of baht. Then more. Lucas watched the withdrawals stack up, telling himself it was an investment, not a loss. That this was building their life together. That one day, when the shop succeeded, they would sit together in a home they owned, proud of what they had built. Meanwhile, Chada began living more comfortably. New clothes, new jewelry, nights out with friends. When Lucas questioned it, she explained it all away. "Darling, this is for business. I must look professional. Customers want to see success." And Lucas nodded. Because to doubt her meant doubting the love he had built his new life around. The truth. There was no boutique. No seamstresses waiting to be paid. No future business. It was all smoke and mirrors, a story spun with just enough detail to be believable. But Lucas couldn't see it. Not yet. Instead, he felt proud. He thought he was providing for his partner, for the woman who had brought him back to life. He told his expat friends about her plans, ignoring their skeptical glances. He believed he was building their dream. In reality, he was funding his own destruction. And with every transfer, every signed check, every "don't worry darling, I'll handle it," Lucas was sinking deeper into her web. Because once the money began flowing in large amounts, there was no stopping it. The lifestyle was about to inflate. The promises about to grow bolder. And Lucas, lonely, hopeful, desperate to believe, was about to give more than he ever imagined. By now, Lucas was in deep. The small financial favors had become larger investments, and with each transfer, he convinced himself he was building something real. Something lasting. Something that proved he hadn't made a mistake moving halfway across the world. But Chada was already shifting gears. The woman who once seemed modest and humble began to bloom into someone else. Her wardrobe changed first, simple blouses replaced with designer labels. She carried handbags worth more than a month's rent for most Thai families. Her nights out grew more frequent, often under the excuse of meeting suppliers or checking on business partners. Lucas noticed, of course. He wasn't blind. But each time he asked, Chada wrapped her arms around him, pressed her lips to his cheek, and whispered the same refrain. "Darling, this is for us. For our future." And he wanted to believe. More than anything, he wanted to believe that the woman who had reignited his heart wasn't just using him. That the money flowing from his account was planting seeds for their shared life. The requests expanded, no longer framed as small needs but as necessities for their dream together. A better condo, to show we are serious people. A new motorbike, so I can get to the shop easily. Even weekend getaways, we must relax before we work harder. Every purchase was painted as an investment in them. Lucas's friends noticed the change too. A fellow expat pulled him aside one evening at a bar and said, "Mate, she's spending like a lottery winner." "Are you sure about this?" Lucas bristled. "You don't know her like I do." Because by then, it wasn't just about money. Chada had woven herself into his identity. To admit she was using him would mean admitting he had been foolish, that he had been played. And Lucas wasn't ready for that truth. Not yet. Then came the ultimate escalation. Commitment. Chada began dropping hints about marriage. Not in a pushy way, she was too clever for that. Instead, it came wrapped in moments of tenderness. After a long dinner, she would trace her finger along his arm and murmur, "I want to be with you forever." When they visited temples, she clasped her hands and prayed aloud, asking the Buddha to bless their future as husband and wife. Eventually, she even organized a small ceremony with her family. Not a legal marriage, just a traditional blessing. Lucas was flattered. He stood beside her in front of a monk, tied a string around his wrist, and smiled for photos that made him feel like the luckiest man alive. It was all part of the performance. Because now, Lucas was more than just a boyfriend funding her lifestyle. He was her husband in all but paperwork. And in his mind, That meant total trust. That meant deeper commitment. That meant handing over not just his wallet, but his entire financial identity. And so, when she asked for greater access, when she suggested it would be easier if she had his ATM card, his PIN, his banking details, Lucas didn't hesitate. He told himself it was love. He told himself couples share everything. He told himself this was proof that she was the one. In truth, it was the final lock snapping open on the vault of his life. And the woman holding the key was already planning her exit. At first, it was just little things. A missed call that Chada brushed off with a quick excuse, "Oh, that was just my cousin." A night she didn't come home until late, claiming she was with friends from university. A text message Lucas glimpsed on her phone in Thai script, quickly deleted when she noticed his eyes. Lucas told himself not to worry. She was young, she had her own life, she deserved her freedom. Besides, hadn't she proven her loyalty already? She had introduced him to her family, had stood beside him in a monk's blessing, had whispered promises of forever. But deep inside, a quiet unease had begun to grow. One evening, Lucas logged into his online banking account. For months he had stopped paying close attention, trusting Chada to handle withdrawals, to keep things balanced. But that night, curiosity got the better of him. He frowned. The numbers didn't make sense. Large amounts had been pulled in cash. Shopping transactions he didn't recognize. Weekend withdrawals that didn't match his own activities. When he asked her, Chada's eyes filled with tears instantly. "Darling, do you not trust me? I am doing everything for us. Why would you hurt me by doubting?" Lucas felt ashamed. He wrapped his arms around her, apologizing, telling himself he was paranoid. She rewarded him with kisses, gentle laughter, and another night of whispered intimacy. But the doubts didn't vanish. A few weeks later, an expat friend saw her at a bar, dressed to the nines, drinking with younger Thai men. When he mentioned it to Lucas, Lucas grew defensive. "No, you must be mistaken. Chada isn't like that." He refused to believe it, clinging desperately to the image of the sweet, innocent girl he had fallen for. Still, the cracks widened. She became colder at times, snapping at him when he asked simple questions. The warmth that once seemed endless now flickered on and off, like a switch. Some days she was the loving girlfriend, showering him with affection. Other days she was distant, moody, demanding. And with every mood swing, Lucas felt himself trying harder, spending more, giving more, sacrificing more, to bring her back to the woman she used to be. He didn't realize this was part of the cycle. The manipulation. The push and pull that kept him hooked. Until one night, the mask nearly slipped. Lucas returned home earlier than usual and found Chada on the balcony, speaking rapidly in Thai on her phone. When she noticed him, she froze. For a split second, her face was hard, cold, calculating, not the tender girlfriend he thought he knew. Then, as quickly as it appeared, the mask was gone. She smiled sweetly, hung up, and kissed his cheek. "Just my friend," she said. But Lucas couldn't shake what he'd seen. The truth was circling him, clawing at the edges of his denial. He wanted to believe her, wanted to hold on to the dream of love in paradise. Yet the evidence kept piling up, whispers of a nightmare he refused to face. And soon, that nightmare would come crashing down in full. Because the day was coming when Lucas would walk up to an ATM, try to withdraw his savings, and discover that the woman he loved had already vanished. It was supposed to be a simple errand. Lucas walked through the sweltering Bangkok heat, the noise of traffic swirling around him, motorbikes weaving between cars, vendors shouting over the roar of tuk-tuks. He carried a quiet confidence that day. He had decided to withdraw a large sum from his retirement savings, 2.5 million baht, to begin the next chapter of his life in Thailand. A house in Chiang Mai. A permanent base for him and Chada. Their dream. He slipped his ATM card into the machine, tapped in his PIN, and waited. But instead of a stack of cash, the screen blinked, insufficient funds. Lucas froze. That couldn't be right. He tried again, his fingers trembling slightly. Same message. Insufficient funds. Heart pounding, he pressed the balance inquiry. And there it was. His account, his nest egg, his retirement, his entire future, was drained. 0. 2.5 million baht. Gone. A wave of panic surged through him. His throat went dry, his chest tightened. He stumbled away from the machine, staring at the slip of paper in disbelief, his mind refusing to process the numbers. He rushed home. His condo door was unlocked. Inside, silence. Her shoes were gone. Her handbag, her clothes, the faint scent of her perfume, all gone. Chada had vanished. At first, Lucas refused to believe it. He called her phone, disconnected. He messaged her social media, blocked. He even went to the boutique location she had once promised to open, only to find nothing but a shuttered storefront with no trace of her name. The truth began to crash over him like a storm. The girl who had whispered forever, who had prayed beside him at temples, who had worn a ring of string tied by a monk as if it meant eternity, she had played him. Every smile, every tear, every night of intimacy had been calculated. She hadn't loved him. She had used him. And the ultimate betrayal wasn't just the money, it was the intimacy, the trust, the way she had convinced him that for once, he wasn't alone. That night, Lucas sat on the balcony of his condo, staring at the Bangkok skyline. Neon lights flickered in the distance, mocking him. The city that had once felt like paradise now felt like a prison. His whiskey glass trembled in his hand as he whispered to himself, "How could she do this? How could I have been so blind?" He replayed every moment in his mind. The first meeting at the cafe. The tender words. The staged family introductions. The tears over hospital bills. The boutique dream. The mock wedding blessing. The ATM card he had handed over like a love letter. All of it led here. Lucas realized then what many men never admit until it's too late. Thailand's beauty hides dangerous traps. Behind the golden temples and glittering beaches lurk predators who see men like him not as lovers, but as wallets. The expat dream he had chased had turned into a nightmare. His retirement in paradise had ended in hell. And Chada. She was gone, vanished into the neon haze, onto the arm of another man, or perhaps already planning her next victim. Lucas was left with nothing but shame, an empty bank account, and a heart shattered beyond recognition. In the days that followed Chada's disappearance, Lucas's world collapsed. The condo that once felt alive with her laughter now echoed with silence. Her photos still lingered on his phone, smiling selfies, shots of them at temples, arms around each other in night markets, but now they felt like evidence from a crime scene. Each image a reminder of how deeply he had been deceived. The financial damage was staggering. 2.5 million baht, his retirement savings, wiped clean. Money that was supposed to sustain him for decades, to give him comfort in his later years, was gone. When he reached out to the bank, the answer was cold and final. The withdrawals had been authorized. He had given her access willingly. The bank was not responsible. Legally, he had no case. Emotionally, he was shattered. Lucas fell into a spiral of shame and despair. He barely left the condo for weeks. Bottles of whiskey collected by the balcony door. Nights blurred into mornings, mornings into afternoons. The once vibrant Thailand around him, street vendors calling out, saffron-robed monks walking the alleys, tourists laughing over beers, felt like it was mocking him. And then came the isolation. When he told a few expat acquaintances what had happened, some sympathized, but many shook their heads knowingly. "You gave her your ATM card," one said bluntly. "Mate, that was your mistake." Their words cut deep. Instead of comfort, he felt judgment. The shame kept him from calling his family back home. How could he explain it? How could he tell them that he had lost everything, not to a bad investment or a financial crisis, but to a young woman's smile? At night, the voices in his head were relentless. "You fool. You should have seen it. Everyone warned you. You let her play you." Depression crept in like a slow fog. Some mornings he struggled to even get out of bed. The dream of reinvention in paradise had curdled into self-hatred. But slowly, painfully, Lucas began to pick up the pieces. An older Australian expat, a man who had once lost money in a similar scam, reached out to him. "You're not the first," he said. "And sadly, you won't be the last. Don't let her destroy the rest of your life too." That conversation planted a seed. Lucas began attending a small expat support group in Chiang Mai. Men who had been burned, some by romance scams, others by shady business partners. Sharing his story was humiliating at first, but it also felt liberating. He wasn't alone. There were others. He sold off what little he had left in Thailand, downgraded his lifestyle, and found small consulting work online to keep himself afloat. It wasn't the retirement he had dreamed of. It wasn't the paradise he had imagined. But it was survival. Even now, years later, the scars remain. The money is gone forever. The trust, broken. Lucas admits he struggles to let anyone close. But he also shares his story openly, because if his pain can save one man from the same trap, maybe it wasn't all in vain. And that's why his voice still shakes when he says, "My expat dream turned into a nightmare. My retirement in paradise ended in hell. Don't let it happen to you." Friends, if there's one thing Lucas's story teaches us, it's this: paradise can be deceptive. Thailand is beautiful. No one can deny it. The glittering nightlife of Pattaya, the golden temples of Bangkok, the lantern festivals of Chiang Mai, it all feels like a dream. But behind the smiles and the warmth, there are traps. Traps designed for men exactly like Lucas, men searching for love, a second chance, or an escape from loneliness. Let's talk about the red flags Lucas ignored. Too perfect, too fast. Chada declared her feelings within weeks. Real love takes time. Scams move at lightning speed. Overeager intimacy. She mirrored his dreams, his fears, his desires. That wasn't love, it was strategy. Early financial requests. First, it was small. Hospital bills, groceries. Later, it became investments and a shared future. Isolation. She drew him away from skeptical friends, making him feel that only she truly understood him. Lifestyle inflation. Lavish spending, sudden upgrades, demands justified as "for us." These are the hallmarks of a romance scam. They prey not on stupidity, but on hope, on loneliness, on the very human desire to be loved. Why do scams succeed? Because they don't just steal money. They hijack emotion. They make the victim complicit in their own downfall, believing each transfer, each sacrifice, is an act of love. And the shame? It keeps men silent. Keeps them from reporting, from warning others, from admitting the truth. That silence is the scammer's greatest weapon. So here's my advice. If you ever find yourself in a relationship abroad, pause. Question. Verify. Don't hand over passwords. Don't put property in someone else's name. Don't ignore the doubts in your gut. Real love will never demand secrecy, urgency, or blind trust with money. And most importantly, don't let loneliness drive your decisions. Because the hunger for connection is exactly what predators feed on. Friends, if you've watched this far, remember Lucas. His retirement in paradise ended in hell. His expat dream turned into a nightmare. And all it took was a young woman's smile, a handful of lies, and the courage he lacked to say no. If you're planning to move to Thailand, or already living here, take this story as both a warning and a shield. Protect your heart. Protect your future. And if you've already been through something like this, know that you're not alone. Shame doesn't belong to the victim. It belongs to the scammer. Friends, that was Lucas's story. A brutal reminder that sometimes, what looks like love is nothing more than a mask hiding betrayal. Share this video with anyone you know who dreams of moving abroad. Sometimes, the best gift you can give is not encouragement, but a reality check. And before you go, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell. Because the next story I share might just save you, or someone you care about, from the same fate. Stay safe, fellow travelers. Until next time.